Very, very good evening. A warm welcome to all of you. Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Norman Goodfellows. And welcome to a day when I actually do even more than usual need a glass of wine. It's been a rather emotional day for a fair number of us, not just those who are at the actual occasion, but for the many, many, many friends and fans and admirers around South Africa. A little earlier today, we said goodbye to Derek Watts, who was a dear friend of mine, somebody I've spent many hours playing dreadful golf with and working on television with and hanging out around a braai with. And although never a great wine drinker himself, he'd certainly have the occasional glass, but he was more an inexpensive Scotch and Coca-Cola kind of guy. But he was a great admirer of the wine industry, had many friends in the wine industry, and I think he had many admirers in the wine industry as well. And so earlier today, we raised a glass to a wonderful man, a great South African, a national treasure, and somebody who reflected the very best of South Africa, which segues rather nicely into this evening's show, as once again we join Christian and Jax and the team from WineMag and the Prescient team who've put together a selection of reports, as they do through the year, delivering what I think is a really, really important service. And we've had this conversation, I'm sure we'll touch on it again in a moment with Christian, over the course of the last few shows of this nature, speaking about why these reports are so important. And in the greater context of competitions and trophies and judging, there is much debate. Many people have a range of opinions on the value, how they work, and how important they are. My one is very simple, and I will take shamelessly the words of Christian on the last edition of the show, where, yes, you might not have, for instance, an Ibn Sadi, for example, appearing in these particular reports, but then you're unlikely to find a Romani Conti sitting in a Burgundy competition. What we have here are exceptional winemakers and exceptional wines, but also people who are being discovered by the WineMag judges. And it's those judges who really, combined with Christian and the WineMag reputation, add so much to these particular reports, because it's a really impressive collection of people who've sat down, done a tasting, often argued quite fiercely, as I've seen myself, but come up with what they feel is a very meaningful interpretation of the different wines on show. And today we celebrate some excellent Sauvignon Blanc, some Sauvignon Semillon, which is an increasingly important white category in South Africa. And then, what do we call them? Is it a Cape Bordeaux blend? Is it a Stellenbosch blend? Well, no, because it's not just Stellenbosch. Is it a South African blend? Well, then it maybe it's a Cape blend, but it's not Pinotage. There's a question for us to put to Christian in just a moment. But together with a selection of top performers from the recent reports, we'll have a look at some really, really good wine and find out why the winemakers in question feel that not only is their wine done so well, but that these categories are so important to South African wine. So all that coming up in just a moment. First of all, though, let's have a quick look at some of the latest wine news. All right, now this was last night. This was the Cape Winemakers Guild celebration. The wines that are going to be at the Cape Winemakers Guild auction in early October. Had only landed back from Greece yesterday, plunged straight in to just an extraordinary collection of people. This is kind of like going to a music festival and discovering that Springsteen and the Stones and Bon Jovi and Beyonce and Rihanna and every other great band you've ever loved and watched are all playing, but they're all playing at the same time. And you've got to dash from stand to stand, meeting the winemakers, tasting their wine, and sampling what they have. Now, I can not come close to giving you a full analysis, but I will touch on some of the wine I managed to have a quick taste of and enjoyed. The man in the middle there is the great Peter Bubbles Ferreira, godfather in so many ways of Cup Classique in South Africa. Beside him is my good friend Miles, who came along with me for the day. Gave an introduction to wine. It was slow going, but by the end of it, a lot of fun. And amongst the people I introduced him to him was JD, regular on the show from Warwick. We had both of his wines, but I think that was the 2020 trilogy. We then caught up with the Americans. On the left there is Samantha O'Keefe, unsurprisingly a Chardonnay and a Syrah, both of them delightful. And then wines on the right there, that is Andrea Molyneux, and the two wines that she presented, Semillon Gris, which we see so little of, but she is now rebirthing in South Africa, and we're going to see that emerging. It was a delightful wine. She also had a superb Cabernet Franc. First time she's ever made a Cabernet Franc, and she absolutely nailed it. Is there anything she can't do? Out of interest, behind Andrea in the background, you'll see there the team at Paul Kluwer, led by Andries Berger, who has made the very first, I think it's the first heritage site that an Elgin vineyard can now lay claim to, their Wagon Trail Chardonnay that we drank as well. So a busy evening for all of them. Yeah, great to catch up. And then Richard Kershaw on the left, his Chardonnay is Ziggurette. It's got a slightly odd German, Austrian sounding name, but it goes back and speaks to the classics. A Chardonnay that came with a long clonal story that, in very simple terms, just allowed from the Himalaya Valley a slightly meatier, slightly stronger version of Chardonnay from Richard. He's not just a great winemaker, but a complete professor, and from the same part of the world, also with some Chardonnay and some Pinot Noir, Hannah Storm and his Freda, which we tucked into very, very happily as well. Behind Hannah, you can see there a little bit of that AI artwork. It's behind Ardi as well on the left. Ardi actually brought out some 2012 Steen. That is his Cape Winemakers Guild wine for the year. And he reckons he's brought it out too soon at 2012. It was almost as entertaining to drink as it was listening to Ardi. And then David Finlayson on the right with his GS, the tribute wine to the George Spieth, the 66 and the 68. David also got a couple of really interesting wines with the Guild. That auction is going to be happening the first weekend in October 6th and 7th. As always, terrific wine, handpicked by the winemakers and supporting some terrific causes. So thank you to Kenzie and the Nedbank team for a lovely evening with some world-class winemakers, some more of whom will be with me in just a second. All right, so that is a lineup of, we've got some tastings coming up soon. There's one on the 12th of October with Glen Carlo, which is going to be down at Norman Goodfellows, and a few other things on the horizon. I shall keep you posted there. But we dispense with the news. It's a short burst because we have got a whole haul of wine luminaries waiting to join us on the show, led by my good friend Christian Eedes, who is editor, chief taster, and general fountain of wine wisdom at Wine Magazine, with a collection of winemakers, one of whom I actually bumped into last night. So guys, welcome to all of you, to Christian, and to our array of winemakers who join us on the show this evening. Thank you all for joining us, for being part of the show, and congratulations for the thumbs up that you have all received from the latest Prescient Reports, all three of them. They come around quite quickly, Christian, and it's lovely to see the latest ones arrive and to celebrate three really important categories. I'm not sure there are any that aren't important, but these three, in terms of Sauvignon Blanc with sheer sales volume, with Sauvignon Semillon, a space that I think we're doing more and more with, and even more excitingly with in South Africa, and then that benchmark of South African red, the Bordeaux blend, the name of which we shall discuss in due course. But let's kick off with a general overview, Christian, if we can. And just before we look at the specific categories, three wide-ranging spaces. What was the collective feeling of the judges here as to the level of entry for this particular group?
Hi, Dan. So we had 91 entries for Sauvignon, 20 entries for Sauv and Blends, and 59 for Cape Bordeaux Red. It's always a little snapshot of the category. I mean, there are other competitions that get much more entries, and good luck to them. But my general comment would be that Sauvignon, when it comes to the white wines, and Cape Bordeaux, when it comes to the reds, are in rude good health. They, as you alluded to, Sauvignon was massively commercially successful, and I think success breeds success, in that, so to speak. And then when it comes to Cape Bordeaux red, it's a prestige category, and if you want to compete you can't come to market with a mediocre product.
Well, let's kick off with the first of those categories, the Sauvignon Blanc. And the question that is immediately asked when you say something like, it is very commercially successful, is, aha, is it any good though? If we're making lots of it, surely we're sacrificing quality in the search for quantity. And the answer is, of course, no. But give us, directed by the wine that you drank, your feeling on where Sauvignon Blanc is, particularly the wines that you are dealing with more often than not in the Sauvignon Blanc space are wines that are in that premium category.
So entry-level Sauvignon, as we all know, is destined to always be a sort of fast-moving consumer good. It's intended for early drinking. It's meant to be as fruity and uncomplicated as possible, and that's all well and good. The top end, what we're seeing is producers seeking out really interesting sites, and then using different fermentation techniques. I mean, there's a sort of running joke about how all Sauvignon gets inoculated with Vin 7, but increasingly that's not the case. Increasingly you're seeing wild ferments, spontaneous ferments, natural ferments, and then also alternative fermentation vessels. So clay pots, large format foudre, and as a result, because of all of those things, you're seeing a grape that doesn't necessarily make simple wine anymore. There's some very complex, very site-driven, very thoughtfully made wines out there, and that's highly collectible and very rewarding to drink.
And in terms of the style, it's very easy to dismiss Sauvignon Blanc. Oh, it's green, it's acidic, it's going to give me heartburn. There are certainly wines like that, and we've all had them. But an understanding of a South African style, if indeed there is one, and understanding the approach to Sauvignon Blanc and making wine that's far more than some of those simple adjectives that often get tossed around the more inexpensive Sauvignon Blanc. Are we heading in a direction that Christian Eedes feels is not just an impressive one, but one that speaks to South Africa and its claims to Sauvignon Blanc?
Lots of points to make in response to that question. I think that, again, why Sauvignon succeeds at the bottom end of the market is that it is so overtly flavorful and acidic that you can put soda in it, you can put ice in it, and it'll still taste of something. At the top end, it is increasingly site-specific, and I'm not sure that there is a South African style as such, because Elam gives you a very different representation to Constantia, and Constantia gives you a different representation to Durbanville, and so on. What's fascinating is seeing how all these different areas play off against each other, and then if you're a serious wine drinker, there's definitely a style for you. And I think what's happened in the last 5 to 10 years, there was for the wine geeks out there, we were all obsessed with pyrazines, which are the sort of green flavor compounds, over thiols, which are the more tropical fruit flavor compounds. And we've moved beyond that in the sense that now it really is about place. And the thing about Sauvignon, top end Sauvignon, is that it's a very transparent grape. It doesn't, it reflects where it grows, possibly more than Chardonnay, you could argue. And so that, I think that's the fascination of top 10 Sauvignon now. It's like, if you, depending on where you're based and what your winemaking philosophy is, you can end up with a really complex wine.
Now let's head over to one of not just South Africa's spiritual homes of Sauvignon Blanc, but indeed, I think one of the world's, because they make a range of Sauvignon Blanc. I've lost count of quite how many they're doing at the moment. So I have to find out from Janneke. But Janneke, first of all, congratulations. It won't come surely as too much of a surprise that you guys are getting recognition for Sauvignon Blanc. You are well established as some of the finest exponents of the grape in South Africa. Nonetheless, though, getting this recognition, given who the judges are, it is one to put a smile on the face of the winemaking team.
Definitely. Thank you, Dan. It's always nice to see the wines doing so well. It just shows us the hard work pays off during harvest.
And paying off with not one, but two of the top performing wines, 294 pointers, two wines that the judges clearly lapped up, two wines, though, that do have some differences. Talk us through these two wines, what sets them apart, and why you think they've been able to deliver such joy to some very happy judges.
So first of all, I just want to say we see ourselves as Sauvignon Blanc pioneers, having a very established, broad and diverse range, but also constantly seeking to push the boundaries. And I think this is all largely due to Taste Low's obsession with the Sauvignon Blanc grape. And obviously that obsession spills over to the rest of the team in the cellar. But making the difference between our two wines, our Sauvignon Blanc Reserve 22 is a hand-harvested vineyard, limited fruit volumes. And we believe this is a true varietal expression of our Diemersdal dryland farm Sauvignon Blanc. These vineyards are on gentle slopes that are exposed to a typical sort of maritime climate. With our cool air flows, our morning mists with our southeaster wind during the summer, and also our dryland farming and our decomposed granite soils. This gives our vines the opportunity to offer intensely flavored fruit. And we can see that in the purity of the fruit that is pronounced in the wine. So on our Sauvignon Blanc Reserve, it's a very citrusy, very zesty, limey type of Sauvignon Blanc that paves the way for very vibrant, very tropical fruits such as our passion fruits and gooseberries. And this is a very powerful wine, but yet very elegant. So our Journal Sauvignon Blanc is a special one on the farm. The Journal has a very nice story behind it as well. The Journal represents the ultimate expression of our Diemersdal terroir and the 6 generations of the Low family that have been cultivating grapes for the making of wine on the farm. And the Journal also implies the continuous, the living and the evolving. So it ensures that the events are captured and recorded. So our 2021 and 2022 vintages are both carefully selected grapes that we ferment in Austrian oak. So this is one of the two Sauvignon Blancs that we do wood fermentation. And this is specifically done in Austrian oak. And then this is just for the rich mouthfeel. But you also get a lot of your fynbos, tropical fruit, but also nice minerality to the wine as well with the complex fruit. And then our post-fermentation is about 11 months. Stir up every week just to enhance that mouthfeel and concentration in the wine.
You talk about Tase's obsession with Sauvignon Blanc. We have discussed it many times on the show with him himself. He's perfectly open about this. What came first, though, whether it's just him or the generations? Was it we love Sauvignon Blanc, so we're going to make it, or Durbanville is actually a region for great Sauvignon Blanc, and so we fell in love with the grape as a result? Which was the first of those two?
Well, I think he's in a favorable environment. So for having the Sauvignon Blanc thrive here, I think it was an obvious choice as well.
It certainly was. And not just 2 top performers, but 3 in the top 10. One getting a meager 93 points, another outstanding result, and one that I think's got just a touch more age to it. How does that aspect play into your philosophy of making Sauvignon Blanc in a country where there are already people in Johannesburg clamoring to get the 2024 Sauvignon Blanc? Where is it? When is it arriving? We want to drink it now. 2021, that's archaic. We can't possibly drink it. It's far too old. And yet when you get people to drink older Sauvignon Blanc, they discover this joy that the grape can hold if you're allowing it that little bit more time. How does that shape what you're producing with some, if not all, of the Sauvignon Blancs that you do give us?
I think, well, as you said, everybody's always on the edge of their chairs to be the first to buy the 2024 Sauvignon Blanc or the newest vintage. But it's also nice to show people, the public, that we also have, I want to say, a deeper side. We have a bit more elegant side. So I think that shows very nicely in our journal as well. It shows that we are capable of doing many styles, but we like to experiment, but we try to keep the simpler ones as simple.
All right. We won't talk about the partnership you have with New Zealand at the moment, given there's a rather important rugby tournament on the horizon, and you might have to cut off that relationship come the end of October. But we will leave you with congratulations because an amazing, amazing result. They're 3 in the top 10. That commitment to love of and genius in creating Sauvignon Blanc has been reaffirmed once again. So give Taste a big hug from the Dan Really Likes Wine team. And Janneke, congratulations to all of you.
Thank you very much, Dan. I'll tell him.
All right. Not the only Sauvignon Blanc we celebrate on the show today, because there is also a rather good result for Allée Bleu. And what makes this one particularly interesting is that the grapes have come from a little farther afield. Allée Bleu celebrating a top 10 and a very well-deserved one. Grapes from Darling. Talk to us a little about the process of finding these grapes, of deciding that Darling is where you're going to get the very best of the Sauvignon Blanc, and then bringing it back to give it that magic Allée Bleu touch.
How's it, Dan? Firstly, I would just want to say that you talked earlier about the difference between ratings and a report, which this is, and then a competition. And I think there will always be place for all 3 of those different entities in the wine industry, with a certain amount of authority and following in each of those segments in the market. So for us, we are over the moon with the showing of our Sauvignon 2022 from Darling, like you said. And I was just thinking earlier, if I got 93 out of 100 for all my stuff at school, or if my kids can get that right at school when they are now, I would be over the moon always. So we mustn't just take this as a pat on our shoulder. Like Janneke earlier said, there is teams behind us that help a lot. And for us, that's in Franschhoek. Franschhoek, the area isn't well known for Sauvignon, so we use a little bit of what we call terroir by truck. So where I actually buy in grapes from the Darling area. And you asked, how do I get there? It's actually my nephew farms the property there where I buy the grapes from. So there is a little bit of nepotism going there. But again, when you drive into this farm, you'll be amazed what other winemakers you find there. It is a big property that's farming the Sauvignon Blanc grapes in that area. And it is, you used the Gulf earlier, it's about 2-3 irons from IJsselfontein. So it is really close to the ocean. And then the idea with the wine itself is just to really showcase not only the capabilities of my cellar and my winemaking team at Allée Bleu, but also to depict the terroir of the Darling area. What's interesting for us is working with different harvest picks so that you get different ripeness levels. That adds a lot to the depth of flavor. Then we also play, and Christian touched on this earlier, where we actually play with different fermentation vessels, cement eggs, clay amphora, older barrels, and cement tank, and stainless steel tanks, different yeast styles, different fermentation temperatures. And then in our Sauvignon, we also backblend a small percentage of Semillon from the same farm. just to add a little bit more of a silky feel to the Sauvignon, especially in the cooler areas. The Sauvignon can be sometimes a bit racy, and you have to make it not palatable but likable for your customers. And I think a lot of people must trust their own palate. The winemakers, we know what we like, and if you've done it long enough, you will eventually start making wine that both you and your consumer will adore.
Tell me about the style of Sauvignon Blanc that you need to deliver to, I use my term very carefully, the more judicious wine buyer. There are a lot of wine snobs who are, no, I'm not going to drink Sauvignon Blanc. I'm drinking stuff that's got more texture and it's got more ageability, and it's a layered or it's a blend. And you can often slip some Sauvignon Blanc past people when they aren't expecting it, and they, without realizing it, absolutely love it. And then you tell them it's Sauvignon Blanc, and they go a light shade of red. When you're creating a Sauvignon Blanc that sits in that premium kind of category, and you don't want something, you mentioned racing acidity and the use of Semillon to counter that slightly. But how as a wine team you approaching Sauvignon Blanc at that higher level that is giving you a wine that is more than just that kind of quite sharp, drink it quite young, very, very easily accessible and full of flavor Sauvignon Blanc that's certainly got a place, but maybe not for everyone?
No, I agree, and I don't want to step on any toes, because at certain times when you're camping in the Cederberg, and it's nothing to do with Cederberg, but it's 40 degrees and you're sitting with your feet in the river, there's nothing as nice as a very young Sauvignon Blanc that's just a guava bomb. For those of us who know where to get it and when to get it, Columbar is very similar in the amount of guava fruit that the wine actually gives at a young stage. That's not what we're doing. Ours is about, like you said, the structure and the texture of the wine. So we need to build in layers of flavor. So yes, I'm a fan of grapefruit and passion fruit. So of course I try and use yeasts that accentuate those precursors in the wine, and then building in texture in the wine with fermentation temperatures, fermentation vessels, so that the wine has got more depth of flavor, where you then bring in a little bit of the green fig, a little bit of the cut grass, a little bit of the blackcurrant leaf, all the other flavors that Sauvignon is known for. And like I said earlier, we do ferment about 25% of our wine in barrel, but there will never be a wooded side to the wine. It just brings in another layer of texture into the wine. And I think, like Christian alluded to earlier, with these higher or different style of Sauvignons, it's about giving complexity to a wine that's not known for the fact that it can be that layered.
We are going to hear a little more from Van Zyl slightly later, because he has not just one wine to celebrate, but another in our red category. But let's jump back to Christian very quickly as we move on to the second of our categories. And I think the point to take out there from what Van Zyl was saying, Christian, was that little splash of Semillon. It leads rather nicely into the next category of Sauvignon Blanc Semillon. How long do we go until we start telling people that there is a sizable splash of Semillon in Sauvignon Blanc, given that so many people absolutely love Sauvignon Blanc when it's got it, but for now, occasionally a little put off by a grape they maybe don't really know or understand. Oh, Sauvignon Semillon blend, I'm not going to drink that. But when it just says Sauvignon Blanc, even though it's got 10, 12, 15% Semillon, they're absolutely lapping it up.
It's a great question, and I always recount a conversation with Miles Mossop, the former Takara winemaker, who used to make a very smart Sauvignon Semillon blend. They're notoriously difficult to sell, and I was quizzing him as to why that might be, and Miles's answer was that on the one hand, consumers think they taste exactly like Sauvignon and then don't understand why they need to pay a premium. Or on the other hand, they don't taste sufficiently like Sauvignon, and so people revert to drinking straight Sauvignon. And I think there's an element of truth in that. I think I think as soon as there's a significant amount of SEM in the mix, it does take the wine into a more esoteric space. And then, we're all cost conscious, so why must I, people are wary of paying over the odds, and then that's why it remains a niche category. It's a category I've always admired, and to some extent, the fact that Wine Magazine persists with scrutinizing the category is an indulgence on my part, and so we only had 20 entries, and there aren't that many more in them out there. It's a labor of love on the part of the producers who actually make them. But the overall quality is extraordinarily high, and they age magnificently, and they're incredibly food friendly, and yeah, long may the category exist. But I think it's up to all of us to sort of give it as much light and oxygen as possible. Otherwise, they're not going to sort of catch on.
Well, I think in the light of your top performer for this category, you're doing two things. You're shining light on a category that once people get to know a little about and start to understand, they're by and large delighting in, but also shining a light on producers who at one point we maybe didn't know quite so well. And I think the first time Wildeberg shot into one of the reports, there were eyebrows raised, and who's Wildeberg? Now it's a case of, the reports are out. Which ones did Wildeberg succeed in? Because such has become the success over the last little while. It continues, the coterie, 95 points in the Sauvignon Semillon category. JD, congratulations. I know you're building a new cellar, not to make more wine, but just to put up WineMag reports on the wall of, because you're running out of space. Congratulations. What does this one mean to you?
Thank you, Dan. We love being the underdog, so hopefully we can put some money on Namibia winning the World Cup in a month's time. But no, I think for us, this wine, or for me personally, this wine is close to heart. I remember when we started with Wildeberg in 2017 for the 2018 harvest, and asking friends to, where can I buy or where can I get some old vine Semillon? It was almost like walking into old Western movie. It was just doors closing and like a little, wind blowing and the leaves blowing out of the street, and I was standing there on my own. So that's where we started with Semillon, but we always hanged our head on Semillon with our Wildeberg White, as you know, which is a straight Semillon, and with this wine, that's 80% Semillon, 20% from Franschhoek, from two vineyards planted in 1936 and 1905, and then 20% of high altitude Sauvignon Blanc from the Bannock area. And like all our wines, I think we try to not eliminate winemaking, but we try to work as natural as possible, and not trying to panel beat what we think a Semillon or Sauvignon needs to taste like. So it's always nice to get points and to get the gold star on your forehead. But I think the biggest compliment that I've received at the lunch was, I can't remember if it was Christian or Van Zyl, but it was saying that each of our wines has got its own DNA, and that is hitting the nail on there. That's exactly what we trying to achieve with all the wines that we make, and with this wine, is just to show people this is what we want to express from South Africa's Semillon Sauvignon, or call it the Bordeaux White, and as all our wines. And once again, thanks to WineMag and Prescient for recognizing that and shining the light on Wildeberg and giving us this platform actually to show and to shout about it going forward. So it's much appreciated.
I've asked you the question, I think, on Semillon on its own, where you had some success with that not that long ago, and the challenge that South African winemakers face so repeatedly. There is so much we do well. Where do we draw the line? Where do we decide, okay, we can do 8 wines, but not 15? Where is the gray area? Where does it start? Where does it end? When you get a result like this, when you see the growing success and appreciation of Sauvignon Semillon as a blend, on one hand, I'm sure big smiles and terrific to get this kind of recognition, but does it also give you that thought, all right, well, this is stretching my resources even more, because here's now something else we're doing really well that we want to take to market and to showcase?
The thing is, yes and no. We can only make as much as we can. We're not there yet, which is a good thing. I think we bottled the 2022. We bottled 6,000 or 7,000 bottles, but we can definitely double that with the same quality and the same juice going forward. So, like Christian said, it's definitely still a niche market for Semillon or for Semillon blends or Semillon Sauvignon blends. But I told the story at the lunch as well, was when we introduced a Chenin Grenache Blanc under Coterie, we thought that's definitely going to cannibalize the Sem, which is a lesser known South Africa blend. And in fact, in the last 3 years, the volume doubled, and this Chenin Grenache Blanc was just going stable, because I think people buying at that price point, buying at that, not retailers, but more independent wine shops and restaurants, understand more. So it's definitely more a hand sell, but it's definitely doable. Slightly harder work, but I think it's a challenge for us, and we like challenges. So going forward, I would love seeing more and more Semsoft blends out there, because it's as Chenin Blanc, Grenache Blanc, it's definitely a variety, not only in Franschhoek, but in the wider coastal region, that can show people that South Africa is more interesting than, don't want to say just Chenin or Sauvignon, but more interesting, and we have all these amazing vineyards to work with.
Vincel's already spoken of the fact that there is a healthy dose of Semillon in a lot of quality Sauvignon Blanc, and it just adds that breadth and depth to an already strong wine. What would you be saying as a winemaker to the person who's watching the show and they like their Sauvignon Blanc? They're now discovering that maybe some of their Sauvignon Blanc has had some Semillon in it, unbeknownst to them, and now they're ready to take that next brave step into the world of white blends and go out either at their local Norman Goodfellows or out to dinner and invest in a good bottle such as yours of Sauvignon Semillon Blanc. What's your motivation as not just a winemaker, but a wine lover, to go out and get stuck into this particular category?
I think Semillon is quite a diverse variety as well. Like Chenin, I think when I do a blind tasting, usually the younger Semillon, barrel fermented Semillons, sometimes I struggle between Chardonnay and a Semillon top quality. And the cool thing for me about Semillon is also it can mature for ages in bottle. So I would tell the consumers, if you've got a 2022 on the label, you are going to get green fix, nice fruit and freshness. If you get an older vintage, even like I said, this wine can go to 10 to 15 years, and it becomes more lanolin, I won't say honeysuckle, but it's definitely a waxiness on the palate, and it's Semillon, it just keep on giving you and just keeps on getting better in the bottle as it goes on.
As I have discovered, and as will you, if you can hang on to any of it long enough. The challenge is that it does taste rather good now, as the judges confirmed. Let's jump back to our WineMag editor with congratulations once again to JD and the Wildeberg team on another triumph, and jump into our final. Before we do that, I want to jump over to Journey's End quickly and to Mike and to the Sauvignon Semillon blend space. Mike, welcome to the show. Congratulations to you and the Journey's End team there. A lot of discussion already on this particular category. Clearly one you both enjoy and are rather good at making, given the results from the judges. Where do you see Sauvignon Semillon blends within the greater South African wine landscape?
Again, I think it's a growing sort of category, something that has been around for a while, but hasn't got all that much traction, or hasn't been able to be, or people are not buying as much of this wine as they would a single varietal Sauvignon Blanc wine. I did my first professional harvest at Steenberg's. We were chatting about JD Pretorius a little bit earlier. So I was working under JD, and I really fell in love with the Constantia style of, they were making a Semillon Sauvignon Blanc blend, much like what JD makes now. So yeah, I've always been completely besotted sort of by these two cultivars, and this is actually our maiden vintage that we've produced this wine. So I'm really excited about the accolade from Prescient. So I'm very excited about that. It's a wine that will really reward patient cellaring, but will also be completely approachable sort of as soon as it's bottled. So it's completely diverse. JD's chatted a little bit about Semillon adding a little bit of a waxy sort of complexity element, and adding a bit of structure and body to a Sauvignon Blanc, which would be quite traditionally quite tutti fruity initially. So yeah, it was really a passion project for me. I'm very lucky in that my boss allows me to sort of experiment and try out new sort of things, and this is an example of that. Yeah, and I'm really loving the sort of characters of this wine, and I think they really will sort of age and develop exponentially well. And it's not about making a Sauvignon Blanc, even if it's a straight varietal or a Sauv Sem blend or a Sem Sauv blend, and for it to be sort of put into the market immediately. I think people need to start understanding that these wines can be aged, and they can become really sort of world-class wines if you do allow a little bit of aging and a little bit of intensity to develop in the bottle as well.
Very quickly, as we wrap up the Sauvignon Semillon discussion and jump onto our Bordeaux blends in a moment, in terms of the winemaking, the blending of the Sauvignon and the Semillon, is this tougher than other blends, easier? What's the inherent challenge in ensuring that you bring out the very best in both of these without one overwhelming the other?
From Journey's End, our Sauvignon Blanc is definitely a lot more expressive. I wouldn't say we get those overtly sort of green notes on our Sauv. They tend to be more sort of green figgy, a little bit of apple. You almost get like a lemongrassy type of feel about the wine. The Sem is not as aromatic for me, but it definitely adds a textural sort of element and a bit of mouthfeel and weight to the wine. So yeah, other people will use a lot more Semillon as opposed to Sauvignon Blanc. I prefer to do it the other way around. So with this specific collector's series, Sauvignon Blanc Semillon, we used 87% Sauvignon Blanc and then 13% Semillon. And it was all fermented in barrel in sort of larger format, 2,000 liter food trays. Yeah, and that's the sort of blend ratio that I decided worked best at the end of the day.
And there is a selection of rather celebrated judges who would agree with those sentiments exactly. We'll come back to you in a moment, Mike. Let's head back to the Grand Wizard of Wine and get thoughts on this final category. What are we calling this, Christian? We can't keep calling it Bordeaux. In fact, I think Bordeaux should be calling them Stellenbosch blends. Is there a better name? Is there one that you've been playing around with late in the night as you watch reruns of early 2000 Provence Curry Cup victories and decide, yes, this could be the new title for the Bordeaux blend made out of South Africa?
So of course, Sauvignon Semillon is also traditionally associated with Bordeaux, but that was quite easy to get around. I mean, it's, you know, the colloquialism is Sab Sem, and off we go. When it comes to the reds, I mean, Bordeaux is the reference point. I mean, there's no getting away from that. But from a marketing point of view, to always put Bordeaux on the pedestal and give that region the credit for this way of making wine is to always sell ourselves short. And I to date have not yet come up with a better option. But I think it's something to bear in mind, because I think we, as an industry, are our wine quality is not up for question, but our marketing effort certainly is. You know, we haven't won the world over, however far we have come in terms of quality.
Well, let's talk about the quality of this particular group. It's a space we know well. There are names we see here that we are very familiar with in terms of the top 10 with this report. What was the quality, and also what was the style? Are there any shifts that were noticeable? Anything that you and the judges thought, this is a little different, this is nudging us in a slightly different direction? What was the general feel?
So it is arguably the category that demands the highest price premium of anything, and as a result, again, you can't come to market with a mediocre product. So what strikes me is that both the viticulture and the winemaking is of a very high standard across the board, and issues that were around circa 10 years ago, like greenness, have been by and large resolved now. And similarly, there was some pretty clumsy oaking circa 10 years ago, which is also, you know, those are probably the two big issues, like a green character in the wines and clumsy oaking. And when I say clumsy oaking, oak was very often used as a signifier of luxury. So if your wine tasted of chocolate or vanilla, you're obviously spending a lot of money on barrels, and therefore you could charge a lot for your wine. Whereas I think both producer and consumers now got a lot more sophisticated and realized it's about your fruit integrity, your fruit density. Not to say you won't find oak on a serious Bordeaux, and there I go and reference Bordeaux again, but it's just much more sophisticated winemaking and much more competent viticulture, and you know, it's wonderful to see.
Well, let's head over to somebody who's produced many bottles of wine I've thoroughly enjoyed. A couple of them were last night at the Cape Winemakers Guild tasting with Nedbank, with the auction wine in his trademark red cap. Monofe, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you back. Congratulations again. And it's, just to get these kinds of judges, Christian and his team, giving the wine the endorsement. Sure, it doesn't make or break the wine, but it is a rather nice pat on the back from some important peers in the industry.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, guys. Here in Joburg, quite a busy week with the CWG, and we love it up here. Christian, thanks for the WineMag and Prescient. I think the platform is really becoming one of the very important platform, not just for us winemakers and wine producers, but also for the great people out there, and really starting to see all the hard work that you guys have done. And so I'm very excited. Bordeaux blend, of course, it's very difficult to not use the word Bordeaux blend, because myself has spent many years in Bordeaux, and a lot of my love and passion for that style has been from spending time in Bordeaux. And so of course, Potmaskop for us is our flagship wine, and it's really fantastic to be honored with this great being the best producer of this year's Prescient Report. It really just shows of the hard work, and I think from just also what Christian said was, I think from viticulturally we've come a long way. With the way we manage our vineyards, and like kind of trying to get rid of some of the green herbaceous characters we do get up in the Bunnik. We're quite a high altitude vineyards in Stellenbosch, and we do have some of the kind of more basis characters. But viticulture has become a very long way. Cully, Fernand, and myself been doing harvest together for the last 14 years, and between the two of us, we're really starting to understand the vineyards and then my side in the cellar how to make the wine. The 2021 vintage for us was a very special vintage in the sense that 2020, 2019, two very kind of nice vintages, but we haven't really had that graphite chalky tannins that we had in 2017. So it's the first year again to really get that really classical Stellenbosch style cab-led blend. So the Botmaskov scores a 54% Cabernet Sauvignon, and then 27% Cabernet Franc, which is quite a big talking point lately. I mean, if you also know, this whole week we've been busy with the CWG, and most of the Bordeaux blends has a big percentage of Cabernet Franc. So definitely Cabernet Franc is becoming a bit of the winemaker's grape. I do find the variety quite attractive in our blends. It really just mellows a bit of the cab down and just really gives it some more purity, more freshness. Yeah, another thing I'm particularly very proud of about this wine is that it's a 45,000 bottle production. So it's not it's a barrel selection of a few barrels. We really take the wine serious. We really take Stellenbosch cab-led blend very seriously, and so yeah, very exciting. So thank you.
It is well deserved. I had some of that 2017 over a dinner in Athens last week, and the Greeks drinking it were very taken with not just a great wine, but an exceptional vintage. Shades of that in the 2021. The celebrations also, there's a Tonellerie Sylvain barrel that both you and JD and the Wildeberg team are winning as an added bonus for these particular accolades. I want to just extend on that Cabernet Franc discussion. There's Cabernet Franc in a majority of the red blends that are being seen in the auction this year. And Andrea Molyneux, as we said earlier on in the show, bringing out a straight Cabernet Franc to sit alongside those from the likes of Brouwer. What is it about Cabernet Franc that suddenly everybody's discovered, that suddenly everybody wants to showcase, that suddenly everybody realizes can play such an important and impressive role in producing red blends?
I think it's a fantastic thing about Cabernet Franc is that we've learned a lot from from Cabernet Sauvignon production, and also we try to put some of those vineyard practices into the Cabernet Franc, because unfortunately, Cabernet Franc 10 years ago was very perceived as the base is quite harsh, quite rough. But if you really farm the vineyard right and do the right type of practices through the year, you can really try to get that kind of herbaceous, negative character, astringent tannins. You can really work it quite hard in the vineyard and really try to not have so much of that. And what it brings to the blend for me, of course, it's less tannin, it's more perfume, it's got a bit more of those violet characters, and it really tames the cab a bit. Sometimes the cab can be too chunky, too rich, too tannic, and it's a beautiful blending component. I mean, since 2009, our Botmaskop has been second biggest component, was always been Cabernet Franc, but this was actually the first year that we do 27%. It's normally around 17%, and yeah, it's a great variety, and I think it's just gonna get better and better. We see a lot of new plantings of Cabernet Franc in Stellenbosch, and people just like I said, it's viticulture. We've come a long way, and the viticulturists in our teams, they're really making our life much easier in the cellar.
Another grand success for Delagraph team. Very quickly, Mornay, before I let you slip away, and you've got a busy evening with the Guild. Away from the wine itself, a lot of excitement at Delagraph, brand new Japanese restaurant as Virgil tweaks his Asian focus, and a makeover to the suites as well in what is already one of the finest hospitality establishments in the country.
Yeah, we're very excited. There's a whole big new chapter for us on Allée. With Indochine has been with us since the opening of the Allée Lodges and Spa about 12 years ago. And so no new venture for Virgil, a new venture for all of us, even from the winemaking point of view. We're already thinking of what wine we can make for the restaurant. So the new name is going to be Hoseki, and 100% Japanese restaurant, and something really exciting. I mean, the Allée's got a great setting. Even the architecture of the lodges and spa, you really get that feel of just like great site and great feel for good cooking, and very, very excited. And I hope you guys can come and enjoy it with us.
We will indeed. We also look forward to Mornay, that maiden release of Delegraph Saki, which I'm sure is not too far away. And let's head back to Mike at Journey's End. Not just a Sauvignon Semillon to celebrate, but also a Bordeaux blend. You clearly got this one very, very right indeed. What allowed you, Mike, to nail this, to put together something that put such a big smile on judges' collective faces?
Again, it was a bit of a passion sort of project. Historically, our Cape Doctor blend, which is the wine that won this award, was a Cabernet Sauvignon. Maybe it had like 10% Merlot, 10 sort of percent Cabernet Franc or whatnot inside it. I wanted to make I hate the word Bordeaux blend, but I wanted to make a sort of 5 varietal blend. We don't grow any Carmenere on the farm. And I wanted to use all of those different components to add a little bit of complexity to the eventual blend. But it is a predominantly Cabernet Sauvignon driven blend. We use quite a large portion of Merlot, as well as touches of Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, and Malbec. And we were discussing Cabernet Franc a little bit earlier and the viticultural practices, but I agree with Mornay in that, the way we sort of cutting around the leaves around the grape bunches, exposing the grapes to a little bit more sunlight exposure and burning out those quite harsh sort of pyrazine characters in the wine has really benefited this sort of category. But we're doing all of our fermentations in stainless steel tank, partially inoculated, partially naturally fermented, and then they all undergo about an 18-month barrel maturation period in about 60 or 70% new oak. So we do use quite a large portion of new oak. I find it gives this specific blend a really cool purity and expression of fruit. I use largely sort of untoasted barrels, so I'm not really looking for toasty sort of overtly chocolate or coconutty elements in the wine, but just to have nice fresh barrels for the production of this wine is really important for me.
And speaking on that wine you produced, the Bordeaux element of it, we've already spoken to Christian about it. They really more and more refers to the varietals that are going in. I think we've taken on the style on our own terms as South African producers. Have you got any feelings on that name, on where we maybe should head, and how we can perhaps get people to, yes, we know it's the grapes that you'll find in the blend from Bordeaux, but you're drinking a wine that is very much South African?
So we the Cape Doctor is actually called the Cape Doctor the Red. So it can be absolutely any wine barrel that I identify as being a sort of standout over that vintage, and it is a barrel selection. We're not doing huge volumes of this. We're doing about sort of 10,000 or so bottles, but it is literally the standout barrels from that specific vintage. So again, we keep referring to it being a Bordeaux blend because it uses Bordeaux red varietals, but we like to call this wine the red because it can actually be anything that we identify over that specific year. And I agree that we need to find a sort of identity for these sort of blending styles in South Africa, as opposed to calling them Bordeaux blends. But they are, at the end of the day, cultivars that come or are noble grapes from France, from Bordeaux. So I'm not too sure how the marketing or sales sort of pitch should eventually, or what it should eventually become in the future. But we're just going with a red wine blend at the moment. I think is the easiest way of putting it.
All right. Well, here's your warning for a year's time. When, not if, you crack the top 10 again. We want some name suggestions from you, Mike, as we will from everybody else, including Fan Sale, L'Amour Toujours. I'm in France next week, so I is drawn particularly to this wine. Tell me a little bit about your Bordeaux blend, your red blend here, Van Sale.
How's it? Nice to be back. You've touched on a lot of things now. So let's start with the category.
All right, I think we have just lost Van Sale there. We'll try and get him back in a moment. We'll get a last word from him if we can, but in the interim, let's jump back very quickly to Christian. Christian, another great selection of reports. Thank you to you and the judges, and also to Prescient for enabling us to get a spotlight put on these different categories. And it is, as I said at the start of the show, so very, very important. First of all, is this the end of the reports, or have we got any more to squeeze in before the year is done?
No, we culminate in the Chardonnay and Cabernet reports, which is where WineMag as a digital site started, or how should I say, we relaunched WineMag digitally, and we picked Chard and Cab as our two champion varieties, and so we will be ending the year with Chardonnay and Cabernet. And then we not yet 100% confirmed, but we are toying with the idea of a rosé report, which is unprecedented in the modern history of WineMag. Mainly because I have been skeptical about the category, but I think actually rosé, its time might have come. Serious rosé, dare I say. So yes, there's still lots of activity for the year, and yeah, I mean, for heaven's sakes, it's the 31st of August. I mean, we've all got a lot of work to do, and kill some time between rugby matches as well.
All right, I do have one final question for you, Christian, but I think we've got Van Sale back. He's powered up a car battery to his typewriter and an old television screen. So Van Sale, the red blend, full of love, as I'm sure you have for it. Introduce us to us.
Sorry, I've now missed it. Yeah, the John Deere kicked out and the automatic changeover switch, so it was a bit interesting there. So, yeah, for us, for me personally, like there was a lot of winemakers talking before me. For me, similar to Mornay, Bordeaux is a very special area. It was the first place that I traveled overseas to do some external winemaking. And yes, I'm in the bottom of the Franschhoek Valley, just down the Elswigte Pass. So Mornay's farm is about 7 kilometers up the road from me. So I'm actually closer to Mornay than I am to JD, who's down the road in Franschhoek. And we've got the Berg River running through our entire farm here on Allée Bleu. So for me, I can do left bank and right bank. But we found that the Cabernet Sauvignon and everything doesn't really suit our farm. So again, I buy the grapes in from the Bannock area, very close to, or from surrounding farms around Del Air. Mornay doesn't want to sell to me. And then interesting, we've all been talking about the Cabernet Franc side of it. And the interesting thing about the L'Amour Toujours, when I took over here in the middle of 2009, going over to 2010, I really wanted to give something special to our flagship red, which is the L'Amour Toujours. So from day one, it's been a Cabernet Franc driven Bordeaux blend. And when it's Cabernet Franc driven, it needs to be the majority of the blend. So the 2018 for us is at 43% Cabernet Franc. And yes, and again, I differ from the other winemakers speaking. I actually like the Pyrazini feel that I get from the vineyard, especially on Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc. It's what the cultivars are known for. And with the right type of cellar practices, and that's aerated pump overs and multiple rackings post-bottling, you can also drift off the worst of them. But to completely disregard what the cultivar is known for is also not right for me. And it also doesn't depict the area, the Bannock area where the grapes come from, where you actually want to accentuate that fynbos, buchu, blackcurrant leaf character. So yeah, we over the moon with the showing of the Le Moutoujour, and just a feather in the cap of Christian and his team. We got 95 for our 2018, and I think 94 for the 2017 from the same area. So again, it shows consistency in Christian and his panel, but also what we're achieving down here in the cellar.
Well, congratulations. And I think we need to get you back on the show soon. There's obviously a lot more to talk about. And I'm always a firm believer that an Afrikaans winemaker with 2 surnames is somebody you should always trust. So we will do that. I will ask you very quickly, any thoughts on the name of a Bordeaux blend for South Africa?
The problem is my first name is Danielle, and then Van Zyl, which is my mother's maiden name, and then Dutoit, which is French. So we were all laughing about the rugby earlier. I've got bigger problems than that. The thing is, I'm also part of the Cap Classique Association. So we had similar problems with Champagne and Method Cap Classique and MCC, and now again we have to change that because there's so many other people doing Cap Classique things that we as an association doesn't like, but the way that we registered it with the government gazette was initially wrong in 1992. So now we have to think of a reserve site where we actually add value to the guys that are still using the Pinot Noir, the Chardonnay, and the Pinot Meunier. Then you've got the stuff with the port where we now have to call it Cape Ruby and not Ruby Port. And that's just because we don't want the Portuguese to empty our fish outside of our fishing waters. So it's always going to be contentious when we try and emulate what we as winemakers, where we went to gather information and learn our craft or hone our craft. And like I said earlier when I started, a BMW car made in Germany and a BMW car made in Durban is still a BMW. And it's about understanding what you're trying to do and trying to do it better than the French. Because like Christian said, the quality of this portfolio, this side of the winemaker, same as Cap Classique, same as Sauvignon Blanc, what these types of competitions do is really make winemakers not scared of pushing the envelope. And that is what we're trying to do. And by doing that, by doing the experiments and really going out there and putting your name on the block, and like Mark said earlier, where his owner actually trusts him enough to say, listen here, do what you do. You studied it. You've been doing it for 20 years or 15 years. Just go with your gut. And I think that is more interesting than putting a label on it. So if we call it Cape Blends, we can't do that. That's the Pinotage thing. We can't call it New World Blend. That's the Australian or the Shiraz thing. So we really have to be careful of labeling something. According to me, that's got so much history. So I don't personally have a problem with the fact that we call it Cape Bordeaux Blends or Cape Style Bordeaux Blends or any of that. But it's not my call to make.
There are many, many more conversations
Yeah,
to be had.
That was very political. I spoke for 5 minutes without giving you an answer.
Which reminds me of one or two rugby commentators I know rather well, which takes me back to my final question for Christian. Christian, I know if I ask you who's going to win the Rugby World Cup, you will tell me South Africa, as you should. But if I were to ask you based on wine, would it be South Africa beating France in the final with New Zealand, Italy, or New Zealand, Argentina, third, fourth playoff? How does the pecking order shape up if wine were to dictate who wins the Rugby World Cup?
So I actually got asked this question yesterday, and well, it was put slightly different. What is my favorite wine country in the world? And I said, not just for simplistic patriotic reasons, but I genuinely think South Africa is my favorite wine country in the world. And then, of course, the old world, France, Italy, Spain, loom large. But if I only ever drink South African wine and the odd bottle of French, I screw Australia, New Zealand, and the States. I've had the very best from there, and I think we're certainly the best in the new world, and I think we can run the old world close.
All right, yet another good omen as we head into the Rugby World Cup. I will be at the Rugby World Cup next weekend. Look out for shows on Monday from London as I prepare to ride with Ron Rutland from Tuesday through Thursday from London to Paris. 200 of us in support of Child Fund, an official charity of the Rugby World Cup, doing amazing work, particularly in Southeast Asia, using rugby as a platform for social change and support amongst girls and young women. And then Thursday's show will be from France itself on the eve of that opening game as France play New Zealand. And then I'll be taking them the Ireland game in Bordeaux and maybe a little wine as well. And then in Marseille on Sunday for the Scotland-South Africa game. And hopefully the start of what Christian Eedes has just assured us will be a Springbok Rugby World Cup victory. Either way, I'll be watching glass in hand, and you could do far worse than to ensure those glasses are filled with the wines we have been celebrating today. Some extraordinary Sauvignon Blanc that will certainly sway you if you're one of those people whom Sauvignon Blanc is something you tend to steer away from. The Sauvignon Semillon category, which is only getting stronger, and our winemakers this year reiterating just why we do it so well. And then that grand champion consistently over the years of South Africa. Call it what you will, but when those red grapes of Bordeaux come together in South African hands, they do produce something rather lovely. Christian, thank you very, very much once again to you and your boss, Jax, for being with us today, for sorting out today's show. A big thank you. See JD and Mike still with us, and Van Sale as well, using up the last of his penlight batteries. Guys, thank you very much indeed. JD, congratulations in particular on the continued success. It's been a wonderfully inspiring story to see Wildeberg rise and rise and rise. Keep it up. Van Sale, we'll have you back on the show soon as we continue our debate. And Mike, lovely to have you as well. We had Journey's End recently with your rather cool new packaging. You're also making some terrific wine to go with it, and a pleasure to have you on. So guys, to all of you, thank you very, very much indeed, and enjoy the rest of your Thursday evening.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you. Bye.
There we go. Very special guest, very regular guest, and a great friend of Dan Really Likes Wine, Christian Eedes, the rugby-loving wine connoisseur, joining us with a selection of wine drinkers, wine lovers, and winemakers today. A big thank you to Van Sale from Allée Bleu down in that corner of Franschhoek as you head down into the start of the valley. Mike Dawson at Journey's End, JD and his team at Wildeberg, who've made such enormous strides in a few short years. Morne Frey and the guys at Delle Graaf, the Botmaskop, consistently, I think, one of the best value red blends we have in South Africa. It's not inexpensive, but it is sensationally good time and time again. And Diemersdal has established a home of Sauvignon Blanc as there is anywhere in the world of Sauvignon Blanc. That wraps us up for today. Look out for more magazine episodes on the show tomorrow with Dan Really Likes Wine. And on Monday from London, I will be chatting to some Australian and some New Zealand winemakers as we preview the world of rugby and the World Cup through the medium of wine. Have a great evening. Huge thank you to the WineMag team and to Prescient. Keep up the terrific work. I'll see them for some more reports a little later on this year. And finally, once again, a very, very fond farewell to my dear friend Derek Watts, who we said goodbye to at his memorial earlier on today. Many tears, but much laughter as a national treasure in South Africa said goodbye. As do I. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.